Hey, what's up, guys? It's Mason Fecht. I'm going to be recording part 4 of how to build a watch list today. So let's get straight to it. Just give me one moment to pull up the watch list for Thursday. It's going to be the exact same process as always. I'm just going to get rid of the tickers from last week. And then we will go through transferring stocks that are relevant from today's watch list. Then we will go through the scans, and lastly we will go through my secondary watch lists, see if anything needs to be transferred over, and that is the entire process. Okay, so first we have HSGX. So this was on watch originally because it had a big volume day on Monday, but it did spike straight up into that former resistance around here. And then yesterday it was up about 23% on the day, if I remember correctly. And I kept it on watch because I was thinking potentially, because it was up, maybe it could come back up to this high right here and break out either today or one of the upcoming days. But that is not what it did. Instead, it was down roughly 15% on the day, and I have lost interest in it. It is no longer on watch for a breakout. Maybe it comes back in a few days or so, but for now I'm going to transfer that over to my secondary watch list for listed stocks, because right now it's just trading mid-range and I don't trade stocks that are mid-range. Therefore, it's no play. Next, we have OOIL, which is the fraud, straight up fraud, pump and dump. They got the caveat emptor yesterday. I mentioned that they would be on watch for a morning panic today. That's not what happened. Instead, it was briefly green on the day, had a little dip, came back, and then as you can see in the afternoon, it just took its tumble, and man, did it get crushed. I'm going to keep this on watch tomorrow morning for another potential panic to buy into. But I'm not sure if it will panic, because I was watching level 2 at the end of the day, and there was some big size that came in around this area, all sitting on the bid. And that's why it kind of, it didn't close, it sure as hell didn't close strong, but, it bounced back up near 40 cents, which, 30 to 40, that's, if you do the math, that's a decent little move right there. But I won't be surprised at all if this goes green tomorrow, like if it opens green and then squeezes a little bit, stuff like that. I pretty much won't trade it like that if it does go green. Maybe if it does something very specific, but it's unlikely for me, I'll be looking specifically for a morning panic to buy into. Otherwise, I have no interest in it. The next one is PHAS. We've talked about this a few times. It had one of its bigger volume days on Tuesday. Now it's just coming down a little bit. I'm gonna, because it's a little bit higher priced, because honestly it's not that volatile, the volume isn't that much. The only thing that would really interest me in this stock is if it had a morning panic. But I mentioned before that it's tougher for listed stocks to have clean morning panics worth buying into. I'm going to move it to my secondary watch list just because the chart is pretty clean. But I don't really see myself making a trade on this anytime soon. Maybe if it comes back and breaks out above this 1660 area. But even then, I don't know. Like I said, I'll keep it on the secondary watch list for now, but probably no trade for me. So SFRX, this is an OTC penny play. It came from the sub pennies, kind of went supernova. The volume wasn't that big. I talked about yesterday how that was a fake out breakout attempt. You don't want to buy, generally speaking, you don't want to buy multi-day breakouts that look like this, where it's you have this green candle, it closes nowhere near its highs, and it comes back, creeps back up to that breakout level, and then tries again on the third day. Those generally fail, so that's one to avoid. And then today it did get crushed down about 28% on the day. Now I'm not so interested in it, at least for making a play tomorrow. I've noticed that's something I've never really clarified before. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory, but whenever I'm putting a stock on my main watch list, I want to be very picky about what I choose to put on there, and I want to have a specific plan for every single ticker that is on that main watch list. I'm looking for it to do something tomorrow, and if it does that, then I'm going to take the trade. Otherwise, that's why it'll be on my secondary watch list, because it's a ticker that's interesting, but it's maybe trading mid-range. It's not as close to the breakout level as I want, something along those lines, and it's not a worthy candidate yet of being considered for a trade tomorrow. So with all of that being said, I'm going to move SFRX to my secondary watch list for OTCs. So we have SIML is the next one. I talked about yesterday how it was a pretty solid breakout, but it didn't close as strongly as I would have liked to. It was up 110% on the day yesterday. I said I wouldn't be surprised if it had a little bit of a move today, but more likely it would have a morning panic, and I would look to buy into that. The problem is the panic wasn't very good, and it kind of just went sideways all day. It had a brief dip at the open, and then came back, tried to go green, and then really just went sideways. Overall, I mean, it's only down 10% on the day. It's not too far off its daily highs. I'm going to keep this on watch for tomorrow for a potential multi-day breakout. I'm not sure if that will happen. Ideally, I would like it to consolidate for another day up in this area, and then maybe go for a breakout on Friday or even on Monday. Because the longer the consolidation period on the daily chart, the more likely that breakout is to work. So, like I said, I'm going to keep it on watch because it's one of the more interesting stocks in OTC Pennyland. But, I'm a little less reluctant to take the trade if it's only one day of consolidation. So next we have YRIV. This has just been consolidating the past few days in between 120, 160 area. It's tried going green both of the past 2 days. It's really just gone sideways. I'm keeping this on watch though for a multi-day breakout above this 193 area. The stock is pretty heavily shorted, I believe. And shorts are looking for it to come back down this way and cover their shares. But if it starts to break out again, that could lead to a really nice short squeeze, really good long setup. So I will transfer this over to my watch list for tomorrow. Lastly, we have Yuma. So Yuma, had that big volume day a couple of days ago. Huge gap up, faded all day, and then today down roughly 9%. A little bit of a dip, but came back a little bit towards close, went sideways. And actually, let's see. It essentially came back and held the break, or at least like the previous, the high a day here was 18 cents, and low here was 17.8. So buyers came back in, to form support. So it held up. I mean, that held up nicely, I suppose. I'm going to keep it on my secondary watch list, but maybe in a couple days, this could be a potential multi-day breakout. We'll just see what happens. But I have no intention to really trade this tomorrow. And let me also mention that, like, if it does, it could come back tomorrow. It could have a big spike. I mean, it's not that far off of this 33-cent high. But in order to break out above that level and hold the breakout, that would be a trade that would have to take all day anyway. So one, I'll either see that on my scan or I glimpse at my secondary watch list throughout the day. So I have no concern about missing this play if there is a play. But because I know how these stocks generally trade, it's very unlikely that there will be a play tomorrow, and that is why I'm keeping it on my secondary watch list. Remember, I want to be very picky with what I put on my main watch list. And that is it for Wednesday's watch list. So we're going to move to the nightly scan for listed stocks. And of course, the big runner today was ATAI. Went up after hours yesterday, consolidated during pre-market, and spiked a little bit and then just went sideways most of the day. But as you can see, as the early afternoon rolled around, we had the big squeeze and then it closed strong. But kind of after hours, just a little bit, really just sideways price action. So this is going to be on watch for tomorrow. It's now a multi-day runner. The only thing that would really interest me at this point is a short or a really big morning panic. And I know I'm being repetitive here, but I just want you to, understand these lessons and embed them in your brain that listed stocks, they don't have clean morning panics. Very rarely do they. So, it'll be on watch for that, but it's likely, if tomorrow is its first red day, it'll likely fade all day. So the next one is Boxel. I can already tell you right now, this is not going to be on my main watch list, or on my secondary watch list. It was just up a little bit today, but you can see that recently, there's resistance over here right under 5, here around 4. It's tried spiking past couple weeks, but failed. Doesn't look like, they didn't even have news today. I'm not sure exactly why they were spiking, potentially in sympathy to something, but this is an irrelevant play and best to just ignore it. BTE up 17% on the day. So this is a perfect example of something to ignore. This is more so, this is energy play. I don't really like to trade energy plays except for a few tickers like UMA, CEI, I think S, what are some of them? I don't know. I can't think of them all off the top of my head right now, but I have another watch list for that anyway. But this is not a energy play that I would ever be interested in. You can see it's just up for some reason today. Maybe they had news. I don't even care. Maybe energy was just up in general. But the float is, 556 million. This is not a play this is not a stock you want to focus on whatsoever, so we're going to ignore it. Next ticker is CFRX. So this one, 78 million float. That kind of is the turnoff for me. We're going to go back and look at the long-term chart. Never gone supernova. Really, this is the only time it's traded volume before. I'm not sure if they are. I'm looking at some of their recent news articles. It looks like they're, pharmaceutical-based biotech, something like that. So this is probably why they're spiking. They're just spiking in sympathy to some of the other pharmaceuticals that have been moving recently. It had decent volume today. up 27% on the day. I'm not saying it couldn't head higher tomorrow, but I'm really not that interested in it. But because it's kind of bouncing off of this range here, and sometimes these plays could make good multi-day breakouts, I'm going to put it on my secondary watch list. But it's unlikely I'll trade it. The volume's not that great. It doesn't get extremely volatile. The float is higher, but that's why I'm not really going to sit here and worry about this as a play tomorrow. I'll put it on my secondary watch list, and we'll come back to it tomorrow or in a couple of days. EPE. So this is another energy play. Float is 250 million, but this one got a little volatile today. Closed up 63% on the day. Decent volume candle here. Pretty sure this has never gone supernova. Well, a long time ago, back in 2016, actually I remember energy running back then. It was before I was a trader, but I still watched the markets a little bit. It had a nice little 4 or 5 day run, went from 2 to 7. So it's proven that it can get volatile before. Maybe this could have been a nice overnight long. I'm not sure. I tend to avoid stocks that have these higher floats. But hey, maybe it continues upwards tomorrow. I'll put it on my secondary watch list just because this interesting price action. It has proven that it can be volatile, at least intraday. And maybe, if energy is starting to heat up a little bit, maybe this sets up for a multi-day breakout in a few days. I don't know. It's similar as the last ticker. We'll just put it on the secondary watch list, come back to it tomorrow or in a couple days. INPX. I know this one had big volume today. It was up pre-market on a press release, but didn't really do much. Traded very big volume, but was up. Big pre-market, spiked. I'm sure a lot of shorts came in there, and then it just got crushed the rest of the day. I'll put it on the secondary watch list just because it traded really big volume today, and because it's still up 44%. Maybe in a couple days, if it fades a few days in a row, it could have a little bounce when shorts start to cover. But for now, I'm not really going to care. I don't care too much about it. It's on the secondary watch list. And lastly, Mara. They actually had a reverse split a few days ago, and with Bitcoin looking like it's kind of breaking out of that recent little channel that it formed, it was spiking in sympathy to that along with some of the other Bitcoin plays. So it is, as I kind of mentioned before, unless Bitcoin was extremely hot, I would be more interested in the sympathy plays. But I remember a couple months ago, Bitcoin had what looked like a breakout, and then the next day it opened down like 20%. So it could, I don't know for sure if it ended up breaking out today. I think it was up like 4% or something like that. But I don't want to be long one of these plays overnight, and then Bitcoin gaps down 20% and I get crushed. That's just not worth it, in my opinion. You have to know which plays that are worth it and which ones are to ignore. And in my opinion, this was, maybe you could have day traded this, but I wouldn't want to be long this overnight because I've already mentioned if Bitcoin gaps down, this thing's going to get crushed. And hey, if Bitcoin, goes up substantially, this could have a really nice run. But in my opinion, that's like flipping a coin. You don't know what Bitcoin's going to do. But I will put this on my secondary watch list because it has proven that it can spike in sympathy to Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin really gets going, this could be a potential long. All right, so that's it for the listed scan. Now we're going to switch over to the OTC scan. I'm only going to look at things over 10%. We have BTSC, of course, spiking in sympathy to Bitcoin. This one, I already have it on my OTC secondary watch list. I'll keep it there, but I'm not really interested in it for a play tomorrow. Now, I guess one thing I will mention is if Bitcoin does have a decent move tomorrow, I have all these stocks in my secondary watch list. I'll have an eye on Bitcoin during pre-market and stuff. And if it moves, I mean, I'll consider taking these stocks long. But you know, that's all dependent upon if Bitcoin has a decent move. For now, I don't really care too much. Next, we have CPNFF. This was up 28% on the day. Really, if you go back and look at its long-term chart, it's done absolutely nothing, and then you have this random volume coming out of nowhere. This is mining company. I don't know if this is a pump and dump or if this is, you know, something to do with like spiking in sympathy to commodities or something. I don't know. It's a nice little multi-day breakout above these, but it's not that volatile. I mean, yeah, it is up 28% on the day, but I don't generally trade these foreign tickers that much, especially when it's just random volume like this. I'll put it on the secondary watch list. I'm curious to see if it goes up tomorrow, but I'm really not all that interested in it. So DIGAF, this is a Bitcoin sympathy play, up 56% on the day today. It has a little bit of resistance around this, just above 2 cent area. If I'm pretty sure it's already on. No, actually, it is not on my OTC secondary watch list. This goes for the same as the other Bitcoin sympathy plays. It'll be there. It's proven that it can be volatile. If Bitcoin runs, you know, if the price action's right, I'll consider a long. But I'm not putting it on my main watch list. EDXC, we've talked about this multiple times, up another 13% on the day, but the problem with this stock is that it's just not volatile. You know, I mean, it's taken 4 days to move a little bit over 20%. I'm just not interested in something like that. Keep it on my secondary watch list because it's a clean chart, but I have no intention to trade it tomorrow. FLWPF up 14.5% today. Decent volume day. Biggest volume it's ever traded. Well, I'll go back and look at the longer term chart, but yeah, biggest volume it's ever traded. It's a pot stock. Looks like they signed some sort of agreement. That was the press release today. The only problem is there's some resistance over here. That's why, you know, I'm not saying it won't move up a little bit tomorrow, but it's just not that volatile. I mean, it's only up 14.5% on the day. You know, it's a foreign ticker. These things don't move as quickly. I'm not even going to put that on my secondary watch list. I don't really care. GBTC, I'm not going to pull it up. That's a Bitcoin sympathy play. I think it's best to avoid that and trade other sympathy plays. The reason for that is because the float's much higher. It's harder for it to be volatile. The price is higher, so you can't buy as many shares, stuff like that. I think it's just better to trade the lower price sympathy plays. GRWC. It's a little multi-day breakout from the other day. Only thing is it's running into some, you know, multi-year resistance here in this area. It's an interesting little chart. I'll put it on my secondary watch list, but I'm pretty sure it's going to fail around that 25 cent area if it even gets there. But we'll see what happens. MGTI, we already went over that. MRMD actually surprisingly had a nice little run today, up 21%. Did they have news? No, they did not. Looks like it was just a decent little first green day. Volume was okay. That's the main reason I'm not long this overnight, is because the volume was not very good. There's no news. I feel like I kind of mentioned this yesterday with Shield Q. is that I will not be surprised at all if this goes up tomorrow. But if I'm going to take a trade overnight, I want to have a lot of catalysts working in my favor. There has to be really good reasons to swing it overnight. And this just being up 21% on the day, that's a catalyst, but it's not. There are other things that are missing. No news. Pot is not that hot right now. I mean, like I said, I've seen some moving recently, but no big runners. It has multi-month resistance up here in this $5 area. Just not worth it in my opinion. So I'm not even going to put that on my secondary watch list. I don't really care too much about it. And that looks like everything except for VGWCF. Actually, interesting chart. So this is actually breaking out to all-time highs. Had some news yesterday. They closed a $43 million financing. It's actually pretty good news. The only reason I'm not interested in being long this overnight is because the volume was not very strong. This is kind of similar to MLCPF from the other day, where I talked about how, before this move ever happened, it was breaking out right there above all these recent highs, and the volume was a little bit stronger, but it wasn't strong enough, and that's why the next day it didn't do anything. But then a few days later, whenever it broke out above 3 and had this big volume day which dwarfed all of these other days, it did in fact have a move the next day. It wasn't a huge move, but there was 10 to 20% to capture there. And so yeah, that's whenever I'm looking for those breakouts, I'm looking for big volume. That's the way I want to trade a breakout, big volume. And this VGWCF, I don't like this ticker. It's kind of a tongue twister. VGWCF, yeah, it's a breakout, but the volume is not very strong. I mean, hey, maybe it goes up tomorrow, maybe it doesn't. I don't really care. What I will do though is, because this chart is very clean, I'm going to put this on my OTC secondary watch list, and I will keep an eye on that moving forward, and maybe in a few days or a week or something like that, if it can break out again on very strong volume, then it will have my attention. But for now, I'm going to ignore it. So that is everything from both of my scans. So lastly, what we're going to do, we don't even really have that many tickers. Today was actually a pretty quiet day in the market. The only real runner was ATAI. Other than that, I mean, there really wasn't much opportunity today. Yeah, I didn't even take a trade today. I was bored out of my mind today. So we're gonna go back through. Excuse me. We're gonna go through the secondary watch list real quick, and see if anything needs to be transferred over to the main watch list. Clean it up a little bit if there's stuff that is not really piquing our interest anymore. We'll do that both for listed stocks and OTCs, and then that'll be the end of our watch list building for the night. So first we have AEHR. I already know, I talked about how I was interested to see if this does the same thing as OESX. I won't be surprised at all if it does, but I want to clean up my watch list, so I'm going to remove this. But as I talked about, this chart reminded me of OESX, where it had that volume day, creeped up for a few days, then broke out. But those just aren't really worth trading to begin with. Probably shouldn't have even been paying attention to them. Market's just been slow, so throwing some extra things on there. But we go ahead and take off AEHR because it's irrelevant. ATAI, we already put that on the main watch list for tomorrow, so I'm going to take that off of the secondary watch list. AVEO, recent supernova. It's kind of just consolidating right now around $1. I'm going to leave it in case it has a really solid first green day or something. You just want to keep an eye on recent supernovas for probably a couple weeks just to see if they do anything interesting. BPTH, I'm not going to pull it up, but we know that that's a recent supernova a few weeks back. Went from 2 to 74. It has yet to have a really true first green day, really solid first green day. So I'm going to keep it on my watch list to see if they put out any meaningful news or anything like that, as it could bring in buyers and, could be a nice trade. CCNI, we talked about this was an earnings winner. Now it's just kind of consolidating here. I'm going to leave this on my secondary watch list. I'm not really, it could have a multi-day breakout. I just don't know how powerful it would be. But because it's an earnings winner, because it's holding up around, its highs, because I don't really consider any of this stuff resistance, because no volume was traded. If it starts breaking out and gets a lot of volume, it could get volatile. But this just isn't exactly my type of chart. And for that reason, I'm going to keep it on the secondary watch list, but I'm not just completely throwing it away yet. CEI, we talked about how this was spiking in sympathy to Yuma yesterday. As you can see, it did absolutely nothing today. I'm going to go ahead and just take it off. CFRX, we already put that on there. CVM, this was the multi-month breakout that ran from the mid 4s to over 7. Now it's just consolidating up in this area. Because it's a clean chart, I'm going to keep it, but no intention to really take a trade on it anytime soon. EPE, we already put it on there. FSNN, we talked about this one. It's very similar to PRTO. Big gap down, had some volume. We'll see if it can consolidate for a few days and then maybe try to break out on bigger volume. But usually these take a few months before they'll have that breakout. So I'll probably leave it for a few more days and then probably ditch it. HSGX, we already put that on here. INPX, we put it on here. MARA, we put it on here. InBev, we talked about this. I'm going to keep it on the secondary watch list for now just because it traded big volume the other day, but I have pretty much no intention to take a trade on this stock. OESX, I'm going to get rid of that. We pulled that up when we were talking about AEHR. OPTT, this is one I was talking about, this was the one that ran a few days ago. Had really big volume, got crushed, had a toxic financing, and now it's just sitting here. I'm only keeping it on my secondary watch list because if maybe it could bounce a little bit, but honestly, it just makes it so hard. After these companies do these toxic financings, it makes it so hard to bounce. And honestly, I won't be surprised if it doesn't. But I'm just going to leave it now, maybe take it off after the weekend. PBTS. Recent IPO. I'm leaving it just because it's a clean chart. Maybe if it breaks out above that $8 range with strong volume, it could be a potential trade. But for now, I don't really care about it. PHAS, we already put it on here. PRPO. So this one is actually going to be moved up to my main watch list. And the reason why is because it is now, it took out the high from the other day when it traded over 80 million shares. Now it's so far it's held up. I don't know if this will have a multi-day breakout. It probably comes back down a little bit. I'll be keeping this on watch for either one of two things. Either a clean morning panic to buy into because it's a multi-day runner, or consolidation and a breakout above this 38-cent area for a potential push higher. Those are the two plays, and that is why it'll be on the main watch list. PRTO, I'm not going to pull it up. It's similar to FSNN. And lastly, Yuma, we already put that on the secondary watch list. Now we're going to move over to the OTCs. We have ASDN. Recent volume spike, just consolidating here. I was curious to see if it could have a multi-day breakout. Not that I was going to trade it, just curious to see. But because I'm cleaning up my watch list, I'm going to go ahead and take it off. BTCS, this was actually the Bitcoin play that ran the best in OTC Pennyland. but for some reason it was halted today. No trading. I'm not sure what the deal is. I don't really care. Haven't looked further into it. And I actually think MLCPF is still halted as well. I'm not sure what's going on with these companies. You have to know what you're trading. All of these companies are very sketchy. I mean, I don't even I don't even think you can really consider them real companies. But I'm going to leave it on the secondary watch list for now, just to see if they get unhalted in a couple of days or something. BTSC, we already went over that. CMGO, this is the one that gapped down 70% yesterday, up a little bit today. I'm going to keep it on the secondary watch list because I'm curious to see if it can bounce. I'm probably not going to trade it though because it's sub penny. I don't really touch sub pennies. CPNFF, we already put that on here. DIGAF, we already went over that. That's a Bitcoin sympathy play. EDXC, we've talked about that. EMBI, clean chart, breakout to multi-year highs. The problem with it is that it's not very volatile. I'm going to keep it on here to see if it could have a big breakout on big volume, and then it would get my attention. But for now, I don't really care. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, I'm going to keep those on my secondary watch list because they're creeping up to that $3 breakout level. GBCHF. So this is a Bitcoin sympathy play. And as you can see, it's consolidating well into that 2-cent level. I'm actually going to move this one to my main watch list because if Bitcoin does run tomorrow, this one could spike in sympathy to that. And it proved the other day that it could be volatile. It spiked, or it was up, almost 100% on the day. It's really forming a nice little wedge under that 2-cent level. It's never proven they can go supernova before, but this is the first time it's ever really traded volume. I think they put out some press releases and stuff recently. I'm going to keep an eye on it for a potential multi-day breakout play, assuming that Bitcoin does run, and maybe this could get interesting. Where was I? So we have GRWC. Yeah, we already went over that one. LFAP, keeping that one. MGTI, we've gone over that. Night Food Holdings, pot stock. I'm not going to pull up the chart. Pot stock, cleaner chart. Problem is not that volatile. If it can break out in really strong volume, similar to EMBI, then maybe it would get my attention. PLNHF, it's creeping back up to that 250 level. I've talked about that. If this one, it's the same thing for this one. If it can break out on big volume, that will warrant a trade. But for now, it's just consolidating up here. And I would love for it to consolidate for a few days and then go for that push. But for now, I'm just going to disregard it. It's on my secondary watch list. SFRX, we talked about that. SRUTF, I'm keeping this one. It was multi-day runner. Now it's just consolidating. Maybe if it breaks out above this level, it can have a nice little run. But the issue with this one is that it's not that volatile. So I'm keeping it only because it's a clean chart. Maybe if it got a lot of volume, I'd consider, I would really like that, but it's just not that volatile. UCLE. Multi-day runner here. Look like it's creeping up a little bit out of this consolidation. Maybe if it breaks out above that 180 area, it could have another little run. It's proven that it can go supernova in the past multiple times. So I'm going to keep it on my secondary watch list. Not sure how much I would love to trade it though because the volume's low, but I will keep it on secondary watch. We went over VGWCF, VRUS. Clean chart in OTC Pennyland. The problem is it's not that volatile. If it gets up near this 180 area and breaks out in big volume, I'd consider a trade, but not that interested in it because it's not that volatile. Lastly, we have VSHC. This one overall clean chart, but that's the only reason I even have it on there. Probably would not take a trade on it. The only way is if it broke out on really strong volume. I don't really love this chart, but it's clean. I'll give it that. It's clean. All right, so that is everything. So for the watch list for tomorrow, Thursday, April 11th, I'll be watching ATAI, GBCHF, OOIL, PRPO, SIML, and YRIV. Earlier in the video, I went over why all of those are on my main watch list for tomorrow. I encourage you to be very picky and specific as to why you put a ticker on your main watch list for the following day. You want to have a specific plan for every individual ticker, and if it does those things, you're completely prepared to take the trade and you won't miss it. You don't want that main watch list to get too crowded, because then you're going to overwhelm yourself and you could miss a really good trade because you're sitting there worrying about things that are lower odds setups. Remember, I construct secondary watch lists so that I always know where relevant stocks are in the market. I think I might do one more video in this series, but I feel like after going over this 4 times now, I'm hoping that you're starting to realize, what is consistent about it, how I go about doing this process. Unfortunately, in the time that I've been doing this particular series, there really haven't been any big runners. The market hasn't been that hot. So, I'm going to think about if I'm going to do one more video. What I would like to do is maybe next week or in one of the coming weeks, the market could get really hot, and then I could do another day or 2 of this video series so you can see what it's like when there's actually a lot of runners in the market. But we'll see about that. Anyway, guys, once again, follow me on Twitter where I post free watch lists every single day. Now you know how I go over the process, how I go about constructing my watch list. So I encourage you to do the same. And all of this, my watch lists are contingent upon my strategies. I trade first green days, multi-day breakouts, and morning panics generally on overextended stocks. Those are my long strategies. Short, that's different. As you can see, I don't really talk about shorting in these videos. But if you have any more questions, reach out to me on Twitter, comment on the videos below. As I mentioned before, or mentioned in yesterday's video, you guys have started giving me requests as to what you want to see. I will start working on more videos going over some of those things. I think the next video I'm going to do will go over my scans so that you know exactly, how I'm finding all of these tickers. But yeah, anyway, guys, hope you have a great rest of your night, a prosperous trading day tomorrow, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.